Who's you?
I don't know. We have 11 people.
Hey guys.
Is this on? And I have audio?
Yep.
All right, so welcome to everybody who's on the live stream. We are just starting to get things up and running, and it will be a few more minutes, and then you'll actually get to see our pretty faces as well. So just so you know, everybody who's out there in the live stream, there is also a Ring Central account set up that will go into the chat so that when we get to the points of you guys wanting to ask questions, and there are longer questions, you can feel free to go on Ring Central, and we are monitoring the Ring Central, and we'll bring you up so you can actually ask your questions. Because I know that sometimes try to write your questions in a chat is a little bit more than what you want to do. At 12 noon, we will go live with the first video that will then promote, or will share the game reveal in it. And at 12:30, when that is over, we do have the field set up over on the side, and we will then go live with the field. We'll unveil the game, and you will be able to see it live. And then I know that's when there will be a lot more questions. But for this first 45 minutes, let's say by probably 11:15, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the stuff that was in Game Manual 1, which is stuff that everybody got to know back in August. And we had our team, a lot of them read it, and I have a couple team members who can share with us some of the stuff that they found in it, and we'll just highlight some of the changes for this year. In Game Manual 1, there's not a ton of changes compared to Game Manual 2, because Game Manual 2 is the game-specific stuff versus Game Manual 1, which is just a basic. So give us like another 10 minutes, and then you'll get to see mine and Tyler's smiling faces, and we will start the actual thing. So that goes for all you guys, too. Tap what? Okay. All right. I guess we are getting this party started. We're just making sure that we're really getting this party started.
Yep, they can hear us.
Okay. All right, peeps, we're live. We are live for everybody in the room. So once again, welcome to those of you who are just joining us on the live stream. I am Lisa Russell. I'm a first senior mentor for FIRST, as well as I help coordinate the Excelsior region with Tina and Rebecca and Tyler. And
I'm Tyler Russell. I'm also a coach of RoBoVines, and I am an F.T.A. for the region of Excelsior, New York.
so we got to, okay, you go ahead, talk for a minute.
Okay. So the purpose of today is we're going to start out before noon. We're going to go over Game Manual Part 1, some of the changes that have happened, some of the important things for people to notice in there. And then at noon, we will start the kickoff video. It's about a half an hour long. There's some stuff, you know, some messages from like the CEO of FIRST and that kind of stuff. And then we'll get into the game video. Once the game video is done, we'll move over to the field that we have set up, and we will talk about the field, look at things, take dimensions of things, and take questions for Game Manual Part 2, which also will be released at noon today. So as of noon, you can go onto the FIRST website and actually get Game Manual Part 2, the build instructions, the one-page game manual, or the one-page game description, all of that will all be on the FIRST website as of noon today. Probably
Noon
as of,
15.
Yeah, right, 12:15-ish today. But first, Lisa has some notes about Game Manual Part 1.
Sounds good. And before we go any further, let's just share that everything that Tyler and I say today should not be taken as gospel and should not be taken as the ultimate. You guys need to know that Game Manual 1, Game Manual 2, and the forums that will come out in about 2 or 3 weeks are what you guys have to base your stuff on. So Tyler and I are sharing with you the stuff that we believe to be true and based on our knowledge of being with FTC I think we decided this is our 10th season coaching. It's to the best of our abilities. But keep in mind that FIRST changes as people start to read the manual and look for little ways that they can skirt what FIRST's intention was. And then just sometimes because there's things that haven't been fully thought through and all of a sudden, oh wait, we don't want the game to be played that way. So once the forums open, which usually takes about till the end of September,
It'll be a week or two.
What?
It'll be a week or two.
Yeah, it'll be a couple weeks because it's a chance for people to give questions to FIRST. But first, the forums always supersede whatever is in game manuals. So keep that in mind. So
Well, that's an important thing to keep in mind is the hierarchy of how things supersede each other. So especially for people who are newer to this, there is a hierarchy of what wins. The game video that we're going to watch at noon basically doesn't matter. Anything that's said in the game manual or that's said in that video can basically be ignored because the game manual trumps it completely. So they FIRST actually puts out a thing that says the the video is more of a guide and a welcome thing, but it's not really, shouldn't be considered rules. Game Manual Part 2 is the first place to go for rules. It is kind of the bottom of the totem pole. So it will be the first thing to be overruled. Then anything in the forms supersedes that. So the forms will always trump Game Manual Part 2. I believe Part 2 trumps Part 1. And then everything trumps the video. So just keep that in mind too.
And do keep in mind that a couple times throughout the season, Game Manual 2 and Game Manual 1 will be re-released.
Right.
So when there's things that they think that are crucial enough to come out in Game Manual 2 that needs to be changed, it will supersede it. So FIRST we'll put out Game Manual Part 2 at least, I think last year it was like 2 or 3 times. The other thing that's very nice that when you look at Game Manual Part 2 and they give it out, they release it and they release a new one. On page 1, they share with you what they've changed. So you are also able to go in and see, oh, section 7.4 changed. And then you can go there and you can see the difference. Because it's a big document. I mean, I think it's 71 pages this year. So you're not going to be able to go through. You don't need to go through and highlight both. They kind of do that for you. But then make sure that you go through and take a look at it. Highly, highly recommend that you spend, and your teams, especially your teams, spend some time on Game Manual Part 1 and Game Manual Part 2. Obviously, you're not going to know everything that there is in there, but that's really what everything's based on. That's what the reffing is based on. That's what judging is based on. That's what gameplay is based on. So really learn it.
That and the forums, keep an eye on the forums. Make sure that you have people that are aware of what is on the forums. Really, when you go to competition, you should bring with you Game Manual Part 2 and the forums copied out, so that if you have to challenge a ruling by the refs, you can bring Game Manual Part 2 or the form ruling with you, especially if you're doing something that was talked about in the forums. If someone asked a question in the forums, like last year, there was a question that asking if you could pick up both alliance caps and cap one after the other. That was ruled to be legal in the forms, so that would have been a good thing to bring with you to competition as a printed out version of that form ruling, so that if you had to go to the refs and challenge a ruling from them, you had that form ruling with you. Don't rely that you're going to have internet or cellular service at a competition. A lot of times you do, but it's not a given. Make sure that you have printed, highlighted versions of it, especially if you're doing something that was ruled legal in the forum posts.
And as one of your refs, I would share with you that if you think you're doing something that is going to be questioned, bring it up at the ref meeting at the beginning of the day. There's no reason why it needs to hit the field before you ask about it. Right. Anybody who's been in a competition and anybody who is going to a competition, if you're new, at the beginning of the day, there is a ref meeting with your drivers. We sit and we talk about, it's like 10 minutes, so it's a fairly quick thing, but it's just to give highlights of what we're thinking as refs needs to happen.
And it's to give you guys a chance to ask questions.
But more importantly, it's a chance to give you guys a chance to say. So if you're doing something that you're questioning, ask then.
Also put it in the forums. I mean, if you've got time and you're a week or two out from competition, put it in the forums and get a forum ruling from the official game committee, because anything that's in the forums trumps anything that the head ref may think, basically.
Right. And know that, definitely last year there was a couple of times when things were asked and we didn't have a clear answer, because some of it is based on intent and some of it is based on how you're going to do something, and whether or not it's going, whether it's legal kind of comes down to what your intent is with it. If your intent, is to really trap somebody, that's illegal. But if what you're doing does not totally trap them, that's different. So, but make sure that you ask the questions at the driver meeting if you can. And like Tyler said, make sure you bring all your forum posts to get an idea.
And you can also send us things if you're questioning things. We have coaches calls every other week. So your coach can bring questions to the coaches call to get some insight from other coaches and from potentially refs and FTAs that are going to be on those calls as well. So definitely ask questions. More questions are better than not knowing, getting to a competition and having an issue.
Right. And definitely know that we have in Excelsior Region done a pretty nice job of getting coaches to start to feel like they're a community and feel like they can come. We want you students, all of you team members, to be able to have that same feeling. So starting a network of figuring out how you guys can connect with each other is going to be a focus for this year. I know, like in the Capital District where we all are, you guys, your team members go to coaches. Coaches very often go to an email that we all have with all the coaches in the Capital District, and it gets thrown out there. Same thing needs to happen with you guys. So that's part of a focus for this year that you'll hear more about as we go through the season, because I don't think we have it totally spelled out yet. But really, we want you guys to make sure that you have the networks that us coaches do. So now on to actually game manual part 1. I'm going to ask Ethan to come up here because my very first notes is on scoring. So if Ethan, one of the requirements of our students, of our team, when they left our space on Thursday was to go through the game manual part 1 and share with us what they saw was different. So Ethan's got the first thing that he saw that was different. Just pretend like you're talking to these guys.
So the scoring this year is different. So you get 2 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, and 0 points for a loss. And then the ranking points, so because there's not many points that are going to be thrown out there, there's a lot more chance of a tie. So next is ranking points. And so the first set of ranking points is your alliance autonomous points are all going to be added up, and that's going to be the first set of ranking points. The second set of ranking points is going to be for endgame specific tasks. All of those points you get will be added up. And then after that, it's your highest scoring match is how you'll be ranked. How do I turn this off?
Okay, so now there's the next one that's going to come up and talk is Corin for a moment because on Thursday night he found a different change.
So the change I found was that this year you will need 2 team elements, one for each team color that you're going to be on. The max size is 4 by 4 by 4. The minimum size is 3 by 3 by 3. And it has to have your team number on it, and it cannot resemble a current season's element. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so smart. Did they hear that? Yeah? Okay.
Thank you, Corin. Thank you, Ethan. If you couldn't tell, we kind of put them on the spot and shared with them that we wanted our team to take more accountability this year. So they got thrown into it right at kickoff, wishing, I'm sure, that they knew more of what was happening at noon, but they don't. So, all right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more. I took some notes when I went through Game Manual Part 1. This year's team number display has to be seen from 12 feet, which is our normal. Has to be on 2 opposite sides, which is also normal. What they did take away, and they may have done this last year, I didn't actually look, is the actual number size. It wasn't a thing last year? Okay. A couple years ago, everything had to be at least 3 inches or bigger, your numbers. This year, it has to at least be 2.5, and it has to be viewable, but they're not being super specific with, like, the size of, like, the strokes, I guess.
Right, so there used to be a stroke width that was required. That's not a thing anymore. And there used to be, I guess there is a 2.5-inch tall height requirement still. The other things that are important is that it has to be on a contrasting background. So if you have black numbers on a white background, something like that, yellow numbers on a black background, whatever it may be, you just don't want necessarily like white numbers on a clear piece of Lexan. We're not going to be able to see that. The other things to keep in mind is that when it says they have to be on opposite sides, really what that means is they have to be visible from 180 degrees apart. So if you, for example, had an arm in the middle of your robot with a plate on it, you could put numbers on both sides of that plate, and that's good. That's considered seen from both sides. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the 2 outer walls of your robot. So it just has to be visible 180 degrees apart. It is, at least last year, it is allowed to be on a rounded surface, and it can be wrapped around that rounded surface. It doesn't necessarily need to be completely flat, as long as your numbers can be viewed from 12 feet away, standing, looking at your robot.
Okay, then there's the alliance marker. Now this has not gone away for years. We've been doing this probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. The red square that needs to be affixed to your robot, that has to be 2.5 by 2.5. And the blue circle has to have a 2.5-inch diameter. Has to be adhered to on, I believe, 2 sides and pretty close, again.
So it has to be within 3 inches of your numbers. wherever your numbers are, that marker has to also be within 3 inches of that number on both sides of the robot. So you need 2 markers on the robot that meet those requirements. They also need to be, in some way, they need to be easy to swap. So what we tend to do is we Velcro ours. You could theoretically put a bolt through the middle of it with a wing nut on it or something. You don't want to zip tie them on. You don't want to glue them on. Some people I've seen have had a sleeve that they slide into. That's totally acceptable. They just have to be visible, and they have to be easily exchangeable, because every round you could go red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, and have to swap them after every match. I believe this season they also want you to put your number on them, or that might be the other thing.
Yep,
But
recommended that
either way, put your number on them. Put your number on the back, put your number somewhere. They occasionally get left in queuing, they might fall off on the field or something. It makes it easier for those of us that are at the field to get them back to you. So numbers on them is a huge thing.
Yep, and that came as a recommendation this year. I didn't read the game manual part 1 as well last year, and honestly, I'm old, so I forget what it said last year. So that's what it says this year. Power switch. Only 2 legal power switches right now on your robot. It's either a Tetrix switch or a Rev switch. I will let you go first.
All right, so power switches. Power switches have to control all of the power on your robot. So your power switch has to be between your battery and all of your electronics. When we switch that power switch off, it needs to kill all of your electronics. This is a safety thing, so it's one of the things that we won't let it squeak by, we won't let it anything. It has to have a power switch. It has to be easily accessible, somewhere where we can get to it easily to turn it off if your robot's going crazy on the field. Us FTAs need to be able to kill your robot easily, and we need to be able to kill your robot without putting our hands near gears or sprockets or chain or something that's going to hurt us. It's one of the things that will get looked at during inspection, and honestly, it's one of the things that is most likely to fail a team, just because we can't let things squeak by with that. We have to be able to kill a robot safely and quickly without endangering any of our FTAs or any of our refs or whoever might be doing it. So there needs to be a power switch. It needs to be between your battery and your electronics. It can be extended. So the wires that come off the back of your power switch can be lengthened to reach to wherever you want to mount your power switch, provided they have the right size wire, which is in, I think, Game Manual. Where is the inspection sheets? Is that in 1 or 2? So it's in Game Manual Part 1. In the inspection sheets and in the electronic section, it talks a bit about the gauge wire that you can use for different things. So that, yeah, but it has to happen. It has to exist. Big thing.
My next, and I'm not sure if I'm on or off.
Okay.
My next thing, it goes right back to Tyler. The next 2 things are Tyler. So
You're actually muted.
the next 2 things are actually going to go right back to Tyler. One is the Rev Control Hub, which I am well aware is out of stock. Was
Right.
out of stock since the end of last year.
Slowly coming back. They keep claiming that it will be back. Hopefully, there's supply chain issues. It's happening. Everyone knows that there's supply chain issues, and it's just a thing. Not the end of the world, but it means that we have to kind of work with things a little bit. If you have control hubs, awesome. Use them. Take very good care of them, because you're probably not getting them replaced if they get broken. If you don't have a control hub, especially if you're a newer team that's trying to figure out your electronics, you can use phones on your robot and as your driver station. So you can use Android devices. There's a list of them that are legal. They're mostly Motorola's at this point, so there are just a couple of legal phones that you can get. Honestly, for the time being, until we get a little bit closer to competition, you also can just use an Android phone that's laying around. If you have a parent or a student or whatever with an old Android phone that they're willing to hand over, as long as it meets the software requirements, which I think is Android 7.4,
I think 6.0 is what has gone away.
Okay, yeah. So
So
I think
anything,
it's
it has to be
I think
7.
7.4 is the minimum requirement for the FTC software, for the FTC apps. As long as it has that, just 7? Okay.
23, 24, the minimum version is 7.
Okay.
For this season, 6 is allowed.
Okay, so you are allowed to use Android 6, which I think is Nougat or something like that.
And then it's Marshmallow, isn't it?
And then it's Marshmallow 7. So
Never quite
if you
understood
have an older Android phone available somewhere, for now I would probably say use that until we get a little closer to competition. Once we get closer to competition, we'll have a better idea if control hubs are going to come back in stock and you can get one, or if they're not. If they're not, you'll have to switch to a Motorola, which are the legal phones, and use one of those for competition. But you don't necessarily have to have a control hub for competition. It's nice. It has an advantage, I will admit, but it's not the end of the world. We're
Well,
going to make it work.
All right. But also what we've learned from FIRST is that there will be 2,000 control hubs released.
Okay.
So the first 500 should be going to FIRST in the next couple weeks, and then just a rollout of 500 for the next couple. What they're starting with is that they're going to give them to rookie teams, so because they have nothing. So rather than have them try to, buy phones that aren't going to be good for very long or whatever, they're trying to get it to them. But then from the rookie teams, they're going to start distributing them based on who has ordered through your FIRST dashboard. So this is going to be a plug to say, if you want a control hub, get your teams registered on FIRST and then order them. Because what they're going to
Through
do...
the dashboard.
Yes, has to be through dashboard. I'm not sure.
You can't pre-order at Rev.
Yeah, well, and I haven't heard... Rev right now just says it's out of stock. So you don't even have a place to go on a wait list, do anything.
You can put your email in.
Can you? Yep. I don't know from any of the calls that I've been on, I have not heard anything of that Rev is ever going to have the ability to send them out because they're going to keep shipping them to FIRST or through the FIRST dashboard. So plug for getting registered so that once you're registered, you order it, you don't pay for it until it comes into stock, but you're on the list and know that they're going to start doing it. After today, after kickoff, that list, that wait list is going to grow.
Skyrocket, right?
Because everybody's going to be told the same thing and everybody's going to do it. So not a scare tactic, and I get it that all you guys that are through schools have to do POs and have a whole bunch of stuff that goes through it. I'm just saying a lot of times we don't see people registering until we're very close to competition. There's definitely certain teams that, for whatever reason, it just takes a while for them to get registered. Right now, if you're looking for a control hub, if you're not looking for a control hub, it's not quite as big a deal. I would also recommend it's easier for us in our region to know how many teams we're dealing with. So it's a lot easier for us to, the sooner you guys get registered, the sooner we know how many people we're trying to provide competitions for and all the stuff that goes through it. But if you're looking for a control hub, go sooner rather than later. That's your father. And
Are expansion hubs in stock right now, or are they out of stock
no,
as well? Okay.
expansion hubs are not in stock. They require the same
Chips.
piece of chip that is missing on control hubs. It kind of sounded like we may not see expansion hubs because the chips are going into the control hubs.
Okay.
So that's a thing to keep in mind. And I don't know that to be true. I'm sure a lot more will be released.
And honestly, expansion hubs, you are a little more likely to find locally. So if there's a team that is looking for expansion hubs, my first recommendation would be to put a message out into the coaches' email list that's going on, and there may be a team that has a spare functioning expansion hub that they can lend you. So that would be my first step there. And then we also have, there may be a control hub or two, but control hubs are going to be less likely to have spares of, just because they're newer and they're a little more expensive. The other thing that Lisa wanted me to talk about is the software. So there is a new app being rolled out. It is going to be 8.0. It's just the newest version of the software. Every season, they do a major update. So last season was 7. This season is 8. Minimum requirement at competitions will be 8. It may honestly be 8.1 by the time we get to competitions. I know last year 7.1 was the minimum requirement because of some of the updates that happened. You cannot install the first apps through the Google Play Store anymore. They're not on the store, and they will not be coming back to the store. So the easiest way to do it is through the Rev software. On the Rev website, there's a Rev hardware client, I think it's called, that you can install the apps through. You download it onto your laptop. It has to be a Windows machine. From there, you can plug in phones. You can plug in your control hub. You can plug in your driver hub if you have that. And you can plug in expansion hubs, and you can update everything. You can update the FTC apps on there. You can update the firmware. The only thing you can't update is Android on the phone. Everything else can be updated right through the Rev Control Hub, Rev Control Manager, whatever it is, Hardware Manager, I think. So that's a great piece of software to have on a Windows machine, probably your programming machine, whatever you use to program. I would put that on as well. If you run Android Studio, I'm hearing that Android Studio has to be updated in order to use the newest SDK. So if you have an older version of Android Studio that you've been using for past seasons and you download the new SDK, it might not work in Android Studio right out of the box. You probably are going to have to update Android Studio as well. So just keep that in mind if you're getting weird errors. It's probably that you need to update Android Studio.
I want to talk about the control hub tightness issue for the battery. Didn't we have to do something with the battery when the control hubs would not show? Okay, never mind. Never mind. All right, so I'm going to go to a little bit of the stuff that I know. Am I live? I keep pushing this button. I can't tell if I'm on or off.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So I just made a couple of notes when it came to judging, since that is another piece of this that we have to work through. There is a self-reflection sheet in Game Manual Part 1 that talks about your judging. It is designed for you to do when you're done with your actual judging at a competition, but there is absolutely no reason why you can't do it during practice. It just it allows you to answer the questions for yourself, like what did we share, what didn't we share, what more do we want to share, and kind of rate yourself. I will tell you, as the members of my team that are currently sitting here, we're going to be using that this year because I didn't know it existed last year. So it's a very cool piece to actually talk about your judging and use to figure out what you want to change. Engineering notebook. For those of you who are new or are just returning, since we got past COVID, I know that we're going to have a bunch of teams that are coming back after a couple of years. Engineering notebooks are no longer a required piece of equipment or a piece of your competition. Highly recommended, very useful to your teams, very useful to figuring out your portfolio. It still documents your journey, no matter what. And it's great to have it outreaches where when you're talking to people at outreach and are talking about something, you can share either your graph of something that you did or the process of how you got from having no idea what you were going to do to this is what our robot looks like now. So it's very recommended, but it's not optional, or it's not required. It is an optional thing. Judges will not necessarily ever look at it. It's a good thing to have in your pit. It's a good thing to have ready, because if you have put something in your portfolio that is of interest to either a judge or even to another team, after another team has seen something on your robot and they want to know how you got there, in your engineering notebook, you should have the journey there. So just understand that that is an optional thing, still recommended, may or may not be looked at, probably will not be looked at with judges. Part of what happened is, we're handing them notebooks that are 3 inches thick, but then wanting them to look at...
You're allowed to hand them up to 2.
Yeah, but we only want them to look at the top 5 pages or 6 pages when that was what was happening. It was just, housekeeping wise, it was just a nightmare. They were getting bins of these things that they weren't getting to look through everything. So we have now gone to the portfolio, which anybody who was last year or even the year before, portfolio came back during the COVID year when we were doing everything remote because it was easier to submit 15 pages than it was to submit our 150-page engineering notebook. But it is good to note, it had nothing to do with COVID. It was in the works before that. It was always something that FTC was going to. So every once in a while, people are like, oh, it's another thing that is sticking around. It wasn't. It was coming. It just, we happened to luck out that it came, and it was much more usable to us. So it is the thing that we are using now. It has to be submitted to get any awards. When you look at the award criteria in Game Manual Part 1, which I will say is down lower on my notes to say, really read the criteria on those awards and make sure that you are entering in your portfolio towards the awards you want to win as a team. Like you should really know them and know what's required. Almost all of them, or maybe all of the judged ones, have to have a portfolio.
Everything, yeah.
I think everything does. So it has to be submitted to get any awards. So you want to make sure you bring it. You want to make sure you have it.
On the note of award requirements, real quick, there are 2 other awards that, well, 3 other awards technically that require additional submissions. So Control Award is the first one. Control Award you can put in for at qualifiers and at championships. It has its own form that is on the first site. There's, I think, still a fillable version, and then there's a version you can print off and write in the answers for. That is a form that talks about your programming. It talks about any driver-controlled things that you did to make it easier on your drivers. Like we always talk about the buttons we put in to, slow down our robot, or we had presets for our arm last year, so we talked about those in there. It asks you some questions about autonomous, so you can put in information about that. And then there's a diagram where you draw out what your robot does in the field. That form is required in order to win the Control Award. So that's something worth doing. It gets your name out there, and it's another potential award for you to win. The other awards that are required, they require submission. You need to mute yourself. The other awards that require a submission in order to win them are at the championship only level. So at the championship level, we will have the Promote Award, which is an award for your team. It's basically a 1-minute long PSA for first. So there's a prompt in Game Manual Part 1. I believe this year's is how I learned about first. And then you make a 1-minute long PSA video for them. You enter that, and that's the only way to win the Promote Award. Then there's also a Compass Award you can put in for at championship level, which is about a mentor. So you basically make a 1-minute long video about one of your mentors and put them up to win the Compass Award. And that's another thing that requires a submission and is championship level only.
Okay, so back to the engineering portfolio. Total of 15 pages of content plus a cover page. So do not submit more than 16 pages. Make sure everything fits on front page. Could you go talk to him? The top page can only be a cover page, which introduces your team. And then the 15 pages are 15 pages of your actual information. So you can't, if you go past 15 pages, the judges stop reading at page 15. So it is not beneficial to go further. Do not include links in it, because they're not going to go to the links. Do not include, I guess that's the big one. And that's less of a thing now than it was when we were remote. Because right now, when they're looking at a piece of paper, they can't click on it. That was more of a thing that was a problem when we were remote, and they could click on it and take you somewhere else. Basically, then it's giving you more pages.
So that's a training center for Kickoff.
Oh, geez. Okay, gotcha. Minimum minimum size on each page can be 10 points. Can't go any smaller than 10 points. So if you are trying to cram as much as you can on a page, it's unreadable when it gets smaller. So just be careful that way too.
Well, that's one of those places where the engineering notebook can come in handy sometimes. Is like if you have a graph or something you're trying to show that you want to show a smaller version of in your portfolio, but then you have a full-size version of the graph in your engineering notebook. So, the places like that is where the notebook can come in handy.
Gotcha. Every page in your portfolio needs to have your team number on it. It needs to be one document, but make sure that your team number is on every page, so in case it gets separated, they can see it. There is a self-assessment sheet that FIRST has put together that is not out yet, but will be out shortly, that you can also look at your, see if what you have coming on there is what you really should have. So keep that in mind. That's coming. That'll also be in Game Manual Part 1. I think the last notes that I have, and then somewhere I have to find Tina's welcome, because I printed it but didn't bring it. It is to, if you want a judging feedback at an actual competition, you need to fill out that judging feedback form. That's another thing that you can find. It's very simple. You have to answer 3 or 4 questions, and then it gets submitted at the same time you go to judging, and then you get it back with where they feel you fall. So it's, it has a bunch of different categories. You're not going to get back specific, we like this, we didn't like that. They don't have time for that. But they can share with you how well they think you presented it, whether you've achieved all your goals, whether you're working on it, whether they didn't hear anything about it. So it's a good form that you use in the beginning for yourselves so that you can see where you think you fall and make sure that you're falling towards the accomplished or working towards accomplished part, and use that. So again, FIRST is giving you a lot of tools to help you be successful, to help you be able to determine whether or not you're doing what they're looking for. So make sure you read them and you learn them. Did you pull her up?
Yep.
Perfect. You want to read it?
Sure.
So wait a minute. So this is just Tina's welcome to everybody. Tina is our FTC partner out of MVC, Mohawk Valley Community College.
We're going to cover all of that.
Okay. So Tyler says we're going to cover it all.
All right. So, message from Tina Betts. Many cheerful greetings from Tina Betts, first Tech Challenge partner for the New York Excelsior Tech Challenge region, and from Mohawk Valley Community College, MVCC, in Utica, New York, which is the generous and dedicated partner organization of the New York Excelsior region. Thank you so much for the fantastic coordinators and volunteers who have helped make today's 6 New York Excelsior kickoffs possible. Your time and expertise are greatly appreciated. On behalf of MVCC and FIRST, I wish to convey a message of support, community, and admiration to all the fabulous teams, coaches, mentors, parents, and volunteers for all you do to create life-changing experiences each FIRST season. Positivity, perseverance, encouragement, and paying it forwards should be at the foremost of everything we do. Awesomeness is always created out of whatever magic and teamwork we use to solve the many challenges we all face each season. It is a very exciting day worldwide as the new FIRST Tech Challenge game will be revealed all across the world to thousands of teams today. Everyone is excited to see your progress over the coming months and very much look forward to seeing your innovative robot designs and programming competing this season. Please register with FIRST in your FIRST account dashboard if you have not already. Complete any unfinished tasks in there and update the account with any new coach contacts or retired coaches. Coaches should consistently keep an eye on your emails all season. Emails may be from first@MVCC, tbets@mvcc.edu, or from Lisa Russell at lrussell@firstinspires.org. Lisa is our first senior mentor, as she mentioned earlier. Also read all the Team Blast emails sent directly from First Tech Challenge. If you're not on that list, then you probably need to add yourself as a coach in the dashboard, and I believe you will automatically be put on that list. Links to these emails can also be found through the First@MVCC Team Resources webpage on the MVCC website. Team members, make sure you're checking them out as well for important season updates and opportunities. We are planning for all on-site, in-person events this season. About half of our New York Excelsior competition dates are set and can be found on the First@MVCC events webpage. You will receive emails from Tina in October that New York Excelsior tournament registrations will open sometime in early November. Tournament registration happens through Tina at MVCC, not through your First dashboard. So that's very important. You don't register for competitions through your First dashboard. You register through MVCC, which Tina will have more information about come October, November time. Throughout the season, please make sure coaches and all team members read game manuals part 1 and 2 and their frequent updates so all the competitions can be as successful for every team and volunteer as possible. Also frequently check all the posts in the First forum. During any tournament, the best alliance partners are those who know the game rules and who compete by graciously strategizing and collaborating with their partners throughout the entire day and treat all the hardworking volunteers with respect. We love that our Excelsior New York Region First Tech Challenge teams want to exemplify gracious professionalism in all they do. Gracious professionalism is so important that it was made into a featured segment in the upcoming game reveal video. Gracious professionalism encourages high-quality work, emphasizes the value of others, and respects individuals and the community. Gracious professionals learn and compete and treat one another with respect and kindness in the process. Have fun today. We look forward to a first-rate year together, and I wish everyone an amazing and productive season. I will see you all soon, and thank you for making our New York Excelsior region so incredibly awe-inspiring. Onward and upward, Excelsior, NY Excelsior proud. There you go.
Thank you. Good job.
That was long.
Just so you guys know, definitely make sure that you're also, and I missed part of what Tyler said, make sure that you have bookmarked the MVCC page that has the First Tech Challenge on it. There's a whole page that we will be putting stuff on the whole season. Tina will be putting stuff on. It's where you'll find out where competitions are and all that kind of stuff. So definitely.
Yeah, half of them are up there now.
And half of them are up there now. So with that, we have about 8 minutes until we can start. And the people in our room need to stretch. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, let everybody get up and stretch, and then we will come back on so that at noon we can start the video. So we'll talk to you guys all in a few minutes.
Our live stream, and then we will do a little bit of a Q&A on some of the
One goes here.
things with that field.
Red would go here and here. And blue would go here and here.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yep.
All right, you guys, everybody in the room, just so you know, we did not tape out the whole box. Just was a waste of tape that we weren't going to need to use. But just so you know, this is red side. That's audience side. That's blue side. This is where, like, you'll see your timer and stuff will be in a field. This is where, I think I might be talking into this, Tyler, am I? Okay. What? Okay, now we're live. So this is where, so there is one human player per alliance. So what will happen on each drive team, or each alliance, there will be your normal drive team, which is 2 drivers and a coach, 2 drivers and a coach, and then the alliance, which is what we've been doing all along. The alliance picks which, that there's a human player. The human player will be here. And keep in mind that your whole field is, your whole driver station is taped. And then they will be introducing the rest of the cones in order for you to do it. Hold on just a second, Corin. You have to make sure, as in every other time we played human player, you have to make sure your robot is back away from it. The robot cannot, or the human player cannot enter this unless the robot is away from it. I did not look. I'm guessing there is an actual, sorry you guys that I have my back to. I am guessing there's a certain amount.
I believe it's just not in the zone.
Not in the zone. Okay. Keep in mind again with the taping, I am jumping all over the place, you guys, but it's as things are coming to me. Tape is always the outer one. So like your terminal that's right here is from this corner all the way to that side of the tape. And the same thing with that. When they're saying you have to be out of this, you have to be on this side of the tape. Like the tape is counting in whatever structure, whatever you're trying to do. The beacons are not scoreable. So they are just something separate. They are considered a signal, and that's all they are. They are not scoreable to be picked up and put on. Other highlights.
I actually need to make a correction to the video already. So when you have a second.
Okay.
Okay.
These move. They're all on springs. The fact that this looks like this right now is how you play. The one thing that you cannot, nothing promises you that they'll all be straight up and down. So however they end up when you start, if that's how that starts, that's how that starts. Oh my goodness. This is why I think this game is going to be so interesting, is that it's a very crowded field. The D-scoring that she said that is a problem, D-scoring is a major penalty. So if you've gotten it there, and a robot goes by and de-scores it by accident, that's a major penalty.
30 points.
30 points.
Is it regardless of whether it's your cone or not?
No, you can de-score your own. You just cannot de-score the other team. I mean, you don't want to, but obviously that's a good question. So the question was, just in case, would you get a major penalty if you de-score your own? The answer, I believe, at this point is no. The ties will not be sticking up. Sorry, you guys. As much as this field seems simple to put together when we started, we quickly figured out that it wasn't quite as easy as we thought. We thought we got here this morning, this was going to be a piece of cake. We were to have it set up in 15, 20 minutes. We did not. That's why there are no walls, because we ran out of time. And honestly, for this game right now, for you guys to see it, the walls don't matter, except that there are navigational images, thank you, targets that will be here and here and there and there. An alliance only has 2 spots that they can line up. They have to either be in this square or this square. And again, ignore the green tape. These are our old nats, so the green tape would not be on a normal one.
Actually works out, though.
But it did work out, so we did that on purpose. One of the few things we did on purpose this morning. So those are your only 2 choices, which it's pretty easy to figure out why. It's the only two things that don't have scoring ability. So same thing, those are always your 2 choices, red side and blue side. The signals are right where they need to be for you to see them. When you're looking at in autonomous, it's the inside of these connectors. So it's not a full 24 by 24, it's like 23 and a half by 23 and a half, because it's inside here to inside here. And it's just that, and it's those 2 things that you have to be in when you're scoring.
Matter of fact, I have an image of that.
Tyler's going to give you an image of that. So, this is a question that I have that I don't know that Tyler knows the answer. Whether you have to be completely in a location.
You have to be completely in a location, and as a matter of fact, the location does not include the nubs of the maps.
Right, that's what I just
said. So they
said.
have to be inside of the nubs.
And you have to be completely in
Yep.
to get the 20 points.
Yep. And the signal, these are the patterns for the signal. So the default patterns are those. If you use those patterns, you get 10 points if you're in the right place and use those patterns. Or if you guessed and wound up in the right place, you get 10 points. If you use your own sleeve that you can put over it, which they give you a design template in the game manual, if you use your own sleeve, it's 20 points to be in the right place if you've used your sleeve to detect the location.
Because it's going to be, those images will be built into your programming for those 3 that they give you. So it's just learning to do the other ones.
Right. So there is something in the video already that was said that is not true according to the game manual. So I wanted to talk about that real quick. They talked about, let me transition over to that. They talked about the scoring of cones. So first off, the cone in the, what are those, ground ones?
Ground, yep.
They have to be fully in the ground depot to be scored, or the ground junction to be scored. They can't be sitting off-centered. Off-centered doesn't count as a scored cone. They also cannot be laying down, right? So laying down on their sides
about,
don't count.
½ inch lip that holds them in. And again,
Right.
those things,
They're held pretty
we
well.
just didn't cut the zip ties.
Right.
So it won't be quite as difficult.
So that's important to note, is that they do have to be standing on their base, completely mounted in the junction to count. The other thing is when they're, they have to be straight up and down. They can't be upside down, touching each other there. Those don't count either. When it comes to the posts, they have to be the correct way on the post. They cannot be upside down. So in the video, they say any orientation. Not true. They have to be standing up like a traffic cone. They can't be upside down. They can't be partially on. All right? They can't be sitting next to it. They have to be on the post, standing the correct way, and all the way into the post. So there are, this is Game Manual Part 2. The Appendix F, it looks like, has all of the layouts. And then it talks a little bit about the markers, too. Now, the cap pieces.
But they're not caps.
They're not
Everywhere
caps.
that you read, it's your game element is actually called a beacon.
Right. But
So when you read the beacon, that is our game element for this year.
the beacon is capping the junction. So it's going to be all sorts of fun with terminology there.
Yes.
They don't need to slide all the way down. So the beacon can rest on top. The beacon can be down. Same thing with the floor junctions. The beacons can be down. The beacons can be, however, sitting sideways. But they do have to be entirely on. So like this one is touching the floor. So that one doesn't count because it's also touching the floor.
And, and keep in mind that the beacon can only be scored in the last 30 seconds. And then you claim it as you will then nobody else will be able to score it.
Shelby, we will reiterate any local questions.
So Tyler,
Yep.
the beacon there on the floor junction,
Yep.
ground junction, it looks like it has to be, again, inside the lip.
Correct. So the question was about the floor junction beacons. They do have to be entirely inside the lip. I believe the definition of it is that it can't be supported by the floor. I'm not sure that it has to be totally inside the lip, but it definitely can't be supported by the floor. And there is a diagram somewhere that defines the zone. So yes, now that you say that, and I remember the thing, there is a That
There's a-
circle of that lip is a vertical pipe, basically, and it has to be entirely inside that vertical pipe. So yes, it has to be entirely inside the lip. You also cannot score on top of another alliance's beacon. So for example, this case where blue capped on top of red.
That's
red-
done. That's blues.
No, that's reds. Because red's cap was there first. Blue
Oh,
put a
sorry, I
cap on
didn't realize
top.
that was a cap. Gotcha.
Right. So red gets cap for that junction. Blue gets their cone because blue's cone was there first, but red capped at that point. Blue cannot cap on top of them.
And each robot can only cap one beacon. So last year where you could pick up somebody else's and score it afterwards, each robot right now, according to the rules, can only score one. I mean, you don't necessarily, I guess it doesn't have to be your own. It can be your alliance's, but you can only score one. So in your 30 seconds, you can only score one beacon.
So
Like just each team can? So like say, like there's both the teams on the red, team one on the red cap one, and then team two on the red cap?
Exactly. So the
Yes.
question was, can each team on an alliance cap? That is yes, but you can't cap, go to your alliance's cap and put it onto.
right.
Beacon,
so we could
sorry.
cap and botmen could cap, but we can't cap ours and botmen's.
All right, we
unlike
have a
last
question
year.
over here.
Go for it. I
Is
don't
there a
believe-
penalty if you put a second beacon on top
I
of
think
it?
the penalty is that you don't get anything. from
Right. It isn't
Right. I don't think you lose
advantageous to
points.
you.
Right.
So as of now, I'm not sure, but I don't think I read anything about it. Again,
I'm sure it'll
some
be
of
in the
this,
forums
there's
real
going to be
quick.
some forum questions for this for sure.
Go for it, Alex.
Are we allowed to take cones off, like, if we have, let's say, two on a low one, we want one, two on the ground, and one on the low one, we have to take one off the ground when we go low.
As long as it's ours cones, it should be fine because it's not considered descoring.
Okay,
You would
so the
wanna be
question
careful, though.
was, if we had two on the lower one, and then we decided that we wanted to move it from the lower one to the next, to another beacon.
Right. So if say we're blue, right? So we've got a red one under ours, and then we're on the blue one. What you want to be careful about is that when you try to descore the blue to score it, if you knock that red off, that's 30-point penalty, right? So that's not worth putting this thing anywhere at that point. So yes, but you want to be careful with that.
And you start out, each alliance starts out with a beacon attached, or, controlled by each of the robots. So you do start with one. And then there's stacked five on each of these. So each alliance will have 12 in play from the very beginning. And then your human player can keep putting them in. I have not seen anything, and part of this is me, part of this is I don't know that it's been out there. I don't know how many your human player can put in at the same time.
As many as they want.
Okay.
There's no limit to how many the human player can put in, as long as the robot is not in the
And
place when
it's
they're
what
doing
will
it.
fit in that triangle.
Right.
It has to be, right. So yeah, I mean, I guess if your human player puts 4 in, keep in mind that part of that's going to be depending on how you can pick it up.
Right.
Because you don't want that necessarily filled, and you can only score one at a time. So those are all just strategies. Question.
So I saw on the thing, if a person's trying to put it on the stick, the enemy team can't, like, push it over. Also, you can't,
You have a question? Okay. Bring it over to Lisa.
over for your team to put them on, like, slowly put it back up so it doesn't fling.
I'm not sure if you can pull it over or not. We'll have to.
Yeah,
That'll be a form question probably. of
yeah,
whether
the
or not you pull it
question
over.
was if you yourself or your alliance wants to pull this down and then attach it and then bring it back up so it doesn't fling, is that allowed? I haven't seen.
How do you mean yourself, kind of like your two robots? Can one of your robots?
So
Your alliance partner.
can your alliance partner tip it over while you're doing it? Haven't seen anything that says you can't. I'm sure that will be a clarification as soon as we get to that. Go for it.
So we have a question that if a cone gets knocked off, can it be put back on so so that you don't receive a penalty?
You will receive the penalty the second it gets knocked off. You can rescore it once it's off, but we assess penalties as refs as soon as it happens. So as soon as you descore somebody, we penalize you.
And honestly, if you descore somebody, don't put it back on, because then you give them more points.
Right, because at that point you've already been assessed the penalty.
Not that I want to promote non-gracious things, but don't put it
Right,
back on.
but no, but again, and we had this, I feel like you and I talked about it, or maybe me and Bradley talked about it, about whether or not you could put it back on. But we assess penalties as refs as soon as they happen. So once it's off, it's off.
Right.
Actually, that reminds me of one thing from Game Manual 1 that I noted. Penalties this year go
To the opposing alliance.
positive points
Yep.
to the opposing alliance as opposed to negative points to yours.
Okay. So again, that was just a pointing out that in Game Manual Part 1 now, your penalty points go to the other team. Don't get taken away from your team.
If you have a beacon on top of like the medium one, and you're thinking you want to put on a small one, can you switch your beacon or not?
Take it off of one and put it on the other.
So the question is, if you score on one, your beacon on one, and decide that you don't want it on that one, but want it on a different one, can you?
I don't see why not.
I don't see why not.
As long as it's the one that you scored, I would say. Because if you score to yours and then you try to move the other alliances, then you're going to incur that penalty of handling a second beacon.
And keep in mind
That
that
may
you're
change.
only scoring, that is going to be a foreign post. All
Right.
these are going to be foreign posts, guys. But keep in mind that that beacon is only being scored in the last 30 seconds. So you also are not, it's not like you have a ton
Right,
of
you don't have a
time.
lot of move around.
Like once you get it there, you're going to be limited on time to say, "Oh, I didn't want to do that."
It is notable that you are allowed to handle a beacon and a cone. So you can do both, kind of like last season. You can handle both your... Yeah? Yep, you can put your beacon on top of a cone and grab the cone and put it on the thing. To reiterate that question as an answer, yes, so you can carry both of them and then cap them together, put them on a pipe together potentially and have the cone slide down and have either the beacon stay or slide down depending on how you made it. Yeah, so the question was about possession, and if you get a object onto the robot, stuck on the robot, if it counts as possessed, which, yes. I think you're much less likely to have that happen this year because I don't see these cones move, flying around as much as with the wiffle balls and the blocks. But yeah, I mean, in theory, like if you had a claw, kind of like ours from last season, if you were to have it slip out of your robot and land on the bot, or if your partner were to have one land on your bot, yeah, at that point you're possessing it, and
You're done.
grabbing another one would count as possessing more than one.
And keep in mind that you get a bigger penalty if you score
While
when you're in
possessing.
possession of more than one.
Right. Right. So, I mean, as with every season, it's not a bad idea to build the robot such that things won't get stuck on your bot. No. No.
No.
If you cause another team to
Yeah. All right, so the question
Cause
was, can you, what did you just call it? Spoiling them?
Spoil.
Can you spoil
Right.
the other team by putting one on their robot so that they can't
I
score?
believe not only is that a major penalty for
That would
trying
be
to
a yellow card.
force another team, but
I'll
yeah,
tell
it's
you
a
right
yellow
now,
card. It's-
David's nodding with me
Right.
as the two refs in the room. That would be a yellow card.
It is called
is egregious behavior.
Right.
It goes away. Cannot happen.
Question?
No, in endgame, it does not matter who is the top cone. You can take it.
Right.
So if and we haven't really talked about circuit because that's a whole another piece. I don't know how many of you have ever played Catan, but that's all I keep thinking of is the longest trail on Catan. which my house is, it's dangerous
we're
to play Catan in my
nerds.
house. But, so however you can get. So, I mean, obviously to get from blue to blue, your closest would be go here, 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 and you're done. But it's any way, I mean, if you had to go blue all this way and that way, you could do it. It's any way that there is a path that there's none of the opposite color in the way.
So talking about circuits real quick, on the screen I have some of the circuit information. So it's any two squares or any two corners you can connect to. So it can be right along the line or it can be diagonally across the map. So it is any, from any one, it's any of the, 8 units that are in its vicinity. The other thing of note is that out of the corner, you get the base, the ground goal, and the first 2 low ones. So you have 3 options.
Connect, let's say you take what is it, 5 or 6 across in the middle, you can take 4 along one of the sides in the middle?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's going to be
You can do a diagonal across here. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you would get. So that'd be a circuit, right? That'd be a 4-piece blue circuit across the field.
Why? Don't you have to have that one?
Nope, because these are count as connected to this. These 3 are connected,
Oh, okay.
right? So those 3 and those 3 are connected. So that's a blue circuit. Now that's a short blue circuit, and you do get points for more connections. Yep, you get more point. You get a point for each connect, or not a point,
Does this
but
count as 2 circuits?
that wouldn't count as 2 circuits, but that would be one longer circuit because you would count the longer.
What would happen if we did that and then we had another circuit running along here? Would you get 40
I think you only get 1 circuit. I think you can only make 1 circuit between the 2. You would get more connections, right? Because you get connections. What was that?
So the longer the circuit is, the more points you get?
The longer the circuit is, the more points you get. Yes. So, Henry, can you transition
It
back
is
to
like
the other one?
it feels so much like Catan.
Just hit transition. So if you look at the scoring here, you can see that a complete circuit, which is what this blue channel is here. Completed circuit is 20 points. But then you get 10 points for junction ownership by a beacon. You get 3 points for junction ownership by a cone. And then there's also a, I thought there was a connection one too. Maybe there's not.
Well, down in
Possibly.
endgame, you get points again for junction ownership.
Right.
So you can score, so those score twice.
Yeah, scorekeeping is going to be a little slow in the beginning. I can tell you that now, that it's going to take us a little bit of time to get our, it's not necessarily a field that is quite as easy to look at and fully score. I mean, it's great for the refs because we have something in front of us and we get to click yes, 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 no, no, no. We don't, but it's gonna be a little bit slower to see, okay, is there a connection? Where is that connection? Where is that circuit? How is that circuit completed? As with everything else, the more we do it, the easier it gets, the more it makes sense to us and to you guys. So, but yeah, there's some decent end game thoughts. And again, now think that this one has become green or has become red and has taken away your circuit. Now where do you want to put your beacon? Now you're in your end 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Where do you want to go if you're blue? Yeah, you want to make sure, and you're hoping that at the same time they're not taking over one of your other ones. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty decent strategy game, guys. It's going to be an awful lot of strategy.
Right. I keep thinking about this as tic-tac-toe.
All right. Do we have any questions?
Here is a.
Yes.
So, rookie team, with all the strategy going on, is there communication to the drivers so they don't have to be doing strategy while
Okay, so this is a rookie team question. And it's great to share with all of you. What happens out there is that they have 2 drivers and they have 1 coach. So that coach should be watching what's going on and helping them. Because there's no communication between them and the outside world.
Have Ethan talk.
There's only communication between the 2 of them.
Have Ethan talk.
Oh, Ethan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Our drivers, answer that question.
Okay.
How do you coordinate and communicate?
How do you coordinate on the field as a drive team?
You yell. It's
No.
so there's gonna be 2 drivers and 1 coach, and then that's for 1 alliance or 1 team. So then there's gonna be another set of that in a box. So you're gonna be trying to talk to your coach and then maybe the other team. Because you have 2.5 minutes for the entire game, so it's kind of hard to be doing much communication at all. But
Talk a little bit about what do you, Ethan Stone, do as a driver versus what maybe you, Ethan Combs, do as a coach. What are you focused on?
What do you do? Okay, so
during
I guess the drivers are going to be like very, very focused on just doing 1 task. So maybe like during tele-op, just picking up cones, putting them down, just over and over and over again. Then it's going to be the coach's job to more watch the time, watch everything else going on the field, telling them where to place those cones.
And yes, kindly yelling at the drivers to make them do what I want them to do.
And
very loud.
you can oh, I still have 1. You can also communicate with your alliance. Like the 6 of them there can totally communicate with each other.
7 of them there now.
The 7 of them, yeah. But a human player should be worrying about
Oh yeah.
putting things down.
But the human player should also be in communication with the alliance. Because if the human player is putting cones in this box, they should be paying attention to, okay, where do you need a cone? You need cones over here, I'll put cones over here. You guys need cones over here, I can put them over here. Or you need it right at the end and not near the wall, Beforehand, you'll spend some time in what's called queuing. So that queuing area is really the place for you to do some preliminary strategizing with your alliance partner. You'll pick who's putting down where. If you can't decide who's putting down where, we'll tell you based on things in the game manual. There's actually a laid out alliance partner 1 goes in 1 square, alliance partner 2 goes in the other square. You guys can communicate and pick a square, but if you don't pick, we're going to tell you where you're going because we can't wait for a delay. But beyond that, there's strategizing that happens in queuing. At the beginning of the day, you'll get a match schedule, so you'll know who you're with throughout the day in qualifying matches, so you can talk to them potentially as soon as your last match is over, you're talking to your next partner, assuming your partner's not also on the field competing already. The way that I've in the past tried to tell these guys to drive, and of course they only listen so well, but I try to describe it to our drivers as our main driver, who is controlling the wheels, is in charge of the cube around our robot. They're in charge of a 24 by 24 square directly around our robot and looking at where it's going. Our secondary driver, who last year was in charge of the arm and the claw, really should be in charge of that arm and claw. What's in the claw? Where is the arm? Don't worry about where the robot is. Don't worry about what else is going on in the field. You worry about that arm and getting it where it needs to be. And then our coach, who is Ethan T. in the last season, is kind of in charge of the whole field. You're looking at where the robot's supposed to be going, where it is, the time, like he mentioned, where the other robots are, and you're communicating with our alliance partners. Anyone that's not on the field, you're probably not hearing, because, these guys will tell you, we've shouted at them from the stands. They're not going to hear us, either because they legitimately can't hear us, or they're ignoring us.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of shouting. It's not quiet. There's a lot, and they need to be honed in and focused. So, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. This year, I will tell you that when Tyler and I first opened up this game, our initial thing was, ew, like that's kind of boring. That's gonna go really quick.
Our initial thing was, wow, this is really easy. And then we started looking at,
The more we
This
thought
is
about
not
it, the more we
easy.
were like, this is taking on a whole different element of not easy. So even
it's-
as a question for us,
okay.
hold on.
So, from Nerds of a Feather,
Yep.
is it legal to pull down the terminal to score a cone on it?
Is it legal? So, is it legal to pull down the terminal to score a cone on it? We had that question here as well. We don't fully know. We haven't seen anything that says that it's not, but we also haven't seen anything that says that it is. So we imagine that that's going to be a form ruling. I would put that in, if you're thinking you're going to go that route to score cones, I would put it in the form as soon as it opens. Get yourself in there. I imagine you and 40 other teams are going to ask that same question. And then once you get a response, that's one of those things that you want to bring to competition with you, because we do as good of a job as we can training our refs. We're going to have ref calls with other refs. At the end of the day, you're still going to have refs that call it a little bit differently and that interpret things differently. So if you get a form ruling that says that you can pull these things over, bring a copy of that printed out to competition with you, so that when a ref calls something against you, you had the paper to show them. That would be a good question box. What was that? A photo of the ruling works, yeah. A print is a little more ideal just because it's a print. But yes, anything, whatever works. Right. Yes, but if you bring a phone up to the box, you could encounter a ref that's gonna give you a hard time about looking at the phone, because they're gonna think that you're showing them a replay.
Right.
Right,
There
'cause-
is no, as anybody who's been around knows, the ref's decisions are final, barring you come and show us why it's not.
Right.
Never, ever are we going to watch a replay. It's just not going to happen.
Right, so
and-
recordings, replay, any of that is not being watched.
Right.
Which is the only reason I'd say to print it out.
Otherwise, you guys, we could be there until,
Right.
as it is, we're there until 6 o'clock at night. We could be there forever if we do that.
Right, so that's why I say bring a paper copy, because if you come into the question box, which at every competition there is a question box. It's either taped out or it's a mat or it's something, but it is our question box. When you're in driver meeting, one of the things that the refs will mention to you is where that question box is. When you come to that question box, if you come with a laptop or a tablet or a phone or whatever, it's not that they won't look at it, but it's that some of the refs are going to think that you're trying to show them a replay, and you don't want to waste the time of having that conversation and then showing them the stuff. So if you have it in paper, it's just going to be a little bit easier and quicker potentially. But if you only have it in digital, you only have it in digital, and you just explain to the ref that you're not trying to show them a video, and you move on.
One of our team members just went and measured the tall one. And what did you get for an answer, Ethan?
33 and a quarter inches from the floor to the top.
33, yeah, 33 and a half for the big one, or 33 for the big one, 23 for the middle one, 13 for the low one.
And those are in, I believe, Game Manual Part 2.
They are
will
definitely
have
in Game Manual
those,
Part 2.
Game Manual Part 2 has the entire field map with all the measurements you could probably ever want. The only other real things to note is that these are just standard PVC piping, basically, with the spring on the bottom. So they are smooth. What is their diameter? Are they 1 inch, I imagine?
So these cones here, after autonomous, can you use it as normal cones?
These
No,
cones are not touchable.
Never scored.
Right, these
Never
cones are never
scoreable.
scored, never touched. They just exist.
I
in
mean,
your
they are
life.
going to be touched.
Right. But you
Completely
need to-
honest, they are going to be touched
Right.
because they're in your path.
You have to be careful because there are rules with them. And again, I imagine that this is something else that will be talked about in the forms. But the way that the rules are written is a little strange with these things because you're not allowed to move them. But the way that I interpret it is that if you happen and hit them while you're going to do something else, you've just plowed through them and it's fine.
So it's like you're not allowed to control them?
Right, exactly. You're not allowed to control them. The way that I interpret that is that if you drive through them, it's fine. I imagine it's one of those things that's going to be in the forums as soon as they open because
what I would
It's in the way.
suggest to teams and suggest to all of you out there, really read possession, herding, plowing, controlling.
Right.
Because there's a difference between plowing, where and it's a lot of it is based on intent. If you are plowing through stuff to do something else, but you are not gaining a strategic advantage, you're not going to be penalized. If you're herding, where you've taken 2 or 3 and moved them to here, because then you're going to just score.
Well, honestly, the perfect example is these cones. They've already said that you can knock these cones over to make them easier to grab. So if you knock them over, awesome. You've now plowed into them. If you knock them over and move them down there, now you started to herd them towards the zone, right? So part of the ruling, and Lisa had mentioned earlier that the rules can be a little bit about intent. They're also a little bit about outcome. And if you knock these over and all 5 of them wind up in that zone, you're more likely to get penalized for herding than if you knock them over and they all wind up right here. Because you've now scored points by your act of knocking them over.
Mind you, those blue ones
Henry, can
need
you
to
hit
go
transition?
this way. You're not scoring points in the red when
Yeah.
you're a blue. Just
Right, so that blue set would be a better example.
Yeah, I know. Just, again, remember that everything that Tyler and I say is only as good as what you find in the information, and what
Right.
we show is only what you find in your game manual too,
And
or
forums.
forums. So what else can we answer for you?
Questions, comments, concerns, other things?
Video mentioned TensorFlow multiple times.
Yep.
Do they actually have any rating for how your program's programmed?
So
Not-
it's like this thing it's an AI thing that you can plug into your code.
No, right. He's wondering if there's ratings for it. So not really.
Okay, so it's just a strong recommendation. It's not actually.
Right. So First has actually put out a program to allow us to basically make our own TensorFlow. So basically to retrain a TensorFlow model, which honestly I think we're gonna see a lot of teams use this year, because if you make your own images, there's not going to be a lot of ways to see that image. The way that we did Vision last year, I don't think will work with this. OpenCV, I don't know will work with this. I'm sure we'll try it. But really the only place that writing more complex code will win you awards is through the control award, which is the document that you fill out. You talk about your any subroutines, you talk about any advanced coding, any of those kind of things. Other than that, a basic 5-line code is just as good as a 3,000-line code, especially if the 5-line code works and the 3,000 code is full of bugs, you know? So this is where you win for code, basically.
Wanted to remind everybody that is out there watching us this question and answer, please feel free to put them in the chat if you guys have questions that you want answered. Looking at this field and looking at the fact that this is bent this way brings up a good point. They can be bent. There's nothing that says that.
To an extent.
Yes, but there's nothing that says you can count on when you go to the field, everything is completely vertical. They, when they get set up, I mean, they can't be like this, halfway off the thing.
Honestly, that one and this one would both need to get changed. They need to be close to vertical. They need to look vertical.
Do you expect there to be some specification on how far off of vertical?
Yes, there definitely is.
I believe the specification is that it needs to look vertical. If it's like I said, these.
That's going to be bad.
Right, but like these are noticeably not vertical, so they would have to fix those. Right, this one may not be vertical, but it looks vertical. So that's where it comes in of, don't expect it to be fully vertical, but if it's also clearly not vertical, then my field managers or my field resetters will try to make those more vertical. But it's not going to be perfect.
It's not going to be, and you shouldn't count it.
I would recommend that there be some measurable
Off.
Right.
some way to measure that so that it's not too much judgment?
Yeah, I mean, so the question is about having an actual measurement of how off vertical these pipes are before they're considered off vertical. Currently, I haven't seen anything for it. So currently, there isn't a ruling. And if there's not something in the manuals that tell us a number, we have to go by what the manual says to use. So that's going to be one of those things, again, that is going to kind of change based on who is in charge of the field and potentially what else is going on. Because if there's a control system breakdown, FTAs aren't going to be paying as much attention to this when we're trying to fix the control system.
Well, and know that when you start in Excelsior region as well, we'll probably come up with a fairly standard what we're expecting. But
there's always has to be a consideration of time versus effort kind of deal. So yes, we want these things as straight up and down as possible, but we're also not going to delay games to make sure everything is perfectly, which is part of why they don't necessarily have a value. It's just like with the goal things that I can't remember the names of from last year, being on that dot, but it wasn't okay, what's on the dot? Well, it's on the dot. It's there, but we can't be super because we can't kill all that time. So it's a fun balancing game that I'm sure no one's going to like us for.
Us refs are really not going to.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
So the question was, if whatever you score in autonomous, does it count again? So yes, and this I can more from a reffing point of view and a scorekeeper point of view. They're not going to keep track.
Right.
Like we can't subtract the 2 cones that got scored. That was good. Scored. So what will happen is at end game when you're or at the end of the game when us refs are scoring, we're just going to go through and say, okay, blue has 3 on that one, 3 on the low. You know, red has.
It's worth noting in the scoring breakdown table that they show up twice. They show up as autonomous points and then they show up as teleop points. Because in our scoring system, in theory, it could transfer those over, and it should. My guess will be that the scoring system, when they transfer to driver control, it will already have those 3 scored, but it should double score them because it's in both sections. Question?
Say I'm right here, the robot's right there, and
Yep.
I'm trying to go through, but I can't fit through the glue in the thing. And say the glue is actually here, so you think, okay, since I'm on the red team, I don't want to knock that over, so I gotta go here.
Yep.
And say I hit it.
You hit what?
I hit this.
You hit that?
Yeah, as I'm
Okay.
trying to go through or something.
Yep.
You're fine as long as you don't descore it.
I know. Say I'm trying to go through, nothing's on it, and something on the enemy team happens where, like, because of that, something bad happens to them. Is that a penalty because of me, because I caused that bad thing to happen?
So the question is, if you're trying to squeeze through this gap, you knock the pole, and it causes the opposing alliance to miss getting it on or something like that.
It's going to be
Is it
about
going to be a
intent.
penalty? It's going to be about intent. It's going to be about how the refs see it. It's going to be about how the refs interpret it. So generally, don't do that. Right.
That's such a small gap.
Right.
What if?
And that's the thing. I mean, it's not going to be a cut and dry answer because it's not a cut and dry thing. Right. So I mean, first you have to be over here for whatever reason. Second, you have to have actually hit the thing. There has to have been someone trying to score. Right. I mean, it's about intent. It's about, if you do it 4 times in a match and there's 4 instances of you hitting that thing, somebody missing a thing, you're going to start getting penalized for it because you've now done it a few times. You do it once, it's clear that you were trying to go that way and someone was coming this way, you're probably not going to get scored, but it also depends on what these refs see and how they saw you do it and what they interpreted of it. So it's really it's open to interpretation, very much so.
It's great to be a ref. Yes. So the question was, during the game, are they going to be stacked up? This is what, other than the ones that we've now tossed on things, this is what you will approach the field with. There will be 10 cones on for each team, and then the rest of them will be there. So you have a total of, actually you have a total of 30, now that I'm thinking about it, because we actually had 32 in each box that we opened.
Right, so you have
2 went as
20
signals.
You have 20 in the storage or whatever, substation storage. You have 20, and then you have 5 and 5 in the cone stacks.
So yeah, so that's how, this is how it will look. It is interesting to note, and you guys should come play with this, the difference in how each of them move. So
It's
that's
also worth noting that the mats move with them.
So why was this not a 15, 20-minute setup this morning? Because of those?
Oh, man. Oh. So in these pipes, there is a bolt. So I'm going to pull this thing off of here so that I can get it. So in these pipes, there's a little bolt in there. On that bolt is a rubber stopper that has to get shoved into that pipe. And the rubber stopper is probably at least a 1/4 inch bigger than the pipe. So we tried a few methods of getting these things in here after hearing from Shelby that it was an awful task. Screwdriver kind of is the best bet to get it started, just like what the instructions say from Andy Mark. Take a screwdriver, get it shoved in there. I then took a piece of PVC that fit in and was able to put a piece of PVC and knock it down. And once the stopper was all the way in, it did slide up at that point to knock it in the rest of the way, until it didn't and it got stuck,
yeah,
and that was awfulness.
Yeah. But
so
then
it's fun.
So just a clarification.
Yep.
Once you get these constructed.
Oh, once these
tight
are
constructed.
Yeah, then it's
no, it would
beautiful.
still took Henry and I an hour. Because the other thing is, there's a plate underneath the things, and then this on top. So it's not easy to put them underneath.
Right.
You know, so what we ended up doing, and it actually worked the best, and hopefully we will speed up eventually, is that we made the outside outline, and then we started placing what we needed to place, and then put a mat down, and then place the next one, then put the mat down. There's no other easy way to do it. If you make the whole field and then you're starting to pull it up, you're pulling up the whole mat before
I
you
would
do
definitely lay your plates as you're laying mats. The other thing, which we've already talked about for our meeting space, there's no need to put up a whole field, especially if you have to take it down every single meeting. We're lucky in our space, we get to leave it up, but we have a kind of small meeting space when we put a 12 by 12 field in there. So we will probably do a half field, which is really 8 by 12. And we'll do 2 walls by the 3 walls and cut the field here. So
Just
we'll
for
have
practice.
these pipes, and these pipes, but the field is symmetrical at this point. So if you can do something here, you can do it there, So if you have a smaller meeting space, you could potentially do half a field.
Although 6 by 12, you said 8 by 12 or 6?
So half a field, right, is technically 8 by 12 in the first world because our walls are 4 feet. So we can't do a 6 foot with the walls. You can do a 6-footer, but you want these pipes too. So I would go to the 8 foot anyway and just not put those pipes. You can also, depending on how small your space is, do a 1/4 field. And you could do 4 by 4, do 4 mats by 4 mats and 8 by 8 and work in that space. Work with what you got. Start with as small a field as you can if you're in a smaller meeting space and grow it as you need to for your stuff.
I would add to that in the early season, when you're just trying to get it to work, to figure out how you navigate and place things, probably even a 1/4 field would work. But as you move through the season and you want to say, how do I play the whole game? how you get from there, how you complete a circuit all the way across is going to matter. And so by later in the season, playing with a full field is probably going to matter.
Oh, yeah.
Stupid rookie question. When are we going to be ready to qualify? I've looked online.
What do
Where
you-
are we at for this region? And
Like, where's our first qualifier? When is our first qualifier?
Well, let's back up for a minute.
Okay.
Let's start with what happens in this area is that Tyler and I and the RoBoVines and everybody hold work days. They will start. There's one October 1st. There's one November 3rd. They're all Saturdays. They
This will be in the next coach's blast email.
It will be in
too.
the next coaches thing I send out. It's like it's October 1st, which seems like it's very soon, but it's a great time to come in and network. So it's
And it
October.
is not a scrimmage.
I didn't call it that. I called it a work day. We always called it a scrimmage and we scared people away. So now we're calling them work days. Nobody is expected to have a fully functional robot and be able to do anything October 1st. It is come, ask your questions, build. It gives you.
Bring a box of parts. You know, bring a box of parts with nothing there. Show up. Let us look at your phones or whatever electronics and make sure that those are up to date and ready to go. We'll have the field there because depending on how fast Andy Mark's shipping stuff, you might not have a field by October 1st. So come play on the field. Come interact with the other teams from the area. Just whatever you got,
So-
whatever kids you got, whatever parts you got.
Whoever can do it
Come to the
Saturday
meeting.
morning. We'll be there from like 9 to 2. I don't know who's been around when I look at, we got some fairly new people here. We've been told that like 5 hours of non-stop working makes up for about 2 weeks worth of stuff because once you're there, actually David remembers. I mean, once you're there and you can do stuff. Obviously, if you can't say 9 to 2, you don't say 9 to 2. You say whatever you can do. But that will happen October 1st. That will happen again, whatever the first Saturday in November. We are currently scheduled for the first Saturday in December. And for all of you out there in the world, I will share this on a coach's blast and a coach's call. So
I imagine
anybody
we'll put it
is
on NBC's
welcome to
site.
come. We will also probably do a live stream or a live something like we have today with Ring Central, so you guys can call into questions and feel a part of it, even though you may be in Buffalo or Corning or wherever you are. The one for December is questionable because our first competitions will start in December. There will be at least 2 right now that happen in December. Those dates have not been fully confirmed. There will be a bunch of things that happen in January. I think at this point, we're almost every weekend. We're potentially. What's happening is school has just started. These all happen at schools. Athletics wins before we do. So athletics gets to schedule their things, and then we get to schedule around. I will tell you that in our area, Botman will be holding one definitely the Saturday of Martin Luther King weekend. And then we will be hosting one that's out in Broad Albany. And that will happen on January 29th. That is actually a Sunday. Theirs is actually a Saturday. The other ones are coming. They're potentially, we've got some ideas of when they're happening. They will continue to happen into February, the first 2 weekends in February. As of this point right now, I don't think anybody's looking at either of the weekends that are February break. That could change depending on what people find out, but right now that won't happen. And then our championship will actually be hosted out at MVCC in Utica, and that will happen on March 5th. All of this, again, is on the MVCC page, and as things keep coming, that is something you really want to benchmark, or, bookmark, thank you, because that was where all that stuff is. But that'll give you an idea. I will tell you from our team, we try to do a December one, we try to do a January one, we try to do a February one. It's the growth that happens each time. I would say if you're not ready in December or the beginning of January and you can, come to one. You know what I mean? Like, to see where you're at. And honestly, understand that in December, nobody's ever as far as they are in January and February. We have always hoped that we have wheels and we're moving by that first one.
We have a Ring Central question.
Okay, we have a Ring Central question.
So there was a question in Peekskill, or one of the Peekskill teams asked, if there is a limit to the length of an arm, and if they can put elements on the poles from a taped off section. So length arm limit, there is really not a limit at this point. The only things to keep in mind are potential things like entanglement. So if your arm has something on it that can get tangled with another robot, that's a potential issue. And just potential issues of things getting hit. So you need to be careful with that as far as arm length goes, but there's really not a hard and fast rule against it, as long as you're not causing an entanglement risk and you're not causing a risk to other robots and other teams. So if you're on the Blue Alliance and you start stretching an arm out and you're getting near the Red Alliance, you got to be careful, and you got to be careful of coming over the walls, because anytime your arm exits the wall, that vertical plane of the wall, it can be an instant penalty or even a yellow card for coming outside of the wall with your arm. So you got to be very careful about that. The other half of the question was scoring from taped off zones, which I haven't seen a rule against. However, if your robot is breaking the plane of this tape, of the substation tape, breaking that plane means that your human player cannot load more cones. So you really want to be outside of that tape so that your human player can load more cones in. Question? Okay. You do have to start inside of 18 by 18 by 18. So there's an 18-inch cube that you have to start inside of, but as soon as the game starts, you can expand to whatever size. Right, yep. Yep.
Right.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
right. The question was just, is there a limit on your arm? The limit is the fact that you have to start.
Your starting
We're
volume.
still 18 by 18 by 18. Volume still stays the same. Like that is a hard and fast rule. So whatever you want to do from there, you're good. There is no weight limit this year that we've had in past years, but kind of you don't need to. You're not climbing anything. You're not trying to pick up anything. Nothing's trying to support you. So it makes sense that there's no weight limit.
Right. I mean, the only real thing on the weight side is that you do want to make sure that you're not damaging tiles. So, you know, if you have a 100-pound robot on little wheels, you start leaving marks on these tiles, then you're going to have yourself some trouble. But as long as you're not damaging the tiles, you could have a 100-pound bot and it's fine. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it. Transporting is going to be a pain in the neck, but hey, do what you got to do.
Yeah. And obviously, like, these are our practice mats at this point, so they're...
Yeah. Yeah, these mats are, I believe, the actual Andy Mark mats that we have here. But honestly, what they are is horse stall mats flipped over. So if you're a new team looking to get mats, good place to go is somewhere like Tractor Supply. You know, they might donate a set of mats to you. If you go in there, ask to talk to somebody about a donation, see about some horse stall mats. These are 2-foot by 2-foot mats with the connectors. And so, you know, 6 by 6 gives you a 12-foot by 12-foot field. I think they're 1/2 inch thick. You want to get something that's close to this same feel. Obviously, if it's a little stiffer or a little softer, it's going to affect how the robot moves on them.
And where it affects more than anything else is your autonomous.
Right. It's going to affect your autonomous a little bit.
Because you can drive a little bit different.
Right. It might
And
change how you stop.
Change the feel of that, but not so much like your autonomous may not.
But yeah, I mean, Andy Mark's mats are, you know, whatever cost. I don't know what they run anymore, but that's what they are. They're basically horse stall or workout floor mats. The one side
it's hard
is,
to find ones as thick
right.
than Andy Mark.
The one side is textured, so we just use the smooth side.
And make sure that you use the smooth side.
Right.
Because we have seen it where, hey, you guys, grab a cone to take with you so you guys have something to start with, okay? Doesn't matter.
Red or blue.
Pick a color. You're welcome. Take care,
Thanks
guys.
for coming, guys.
Is everyone aware of that new like sim software thing?
Oh,
FTC Simulator.
FTCsim.org is is a simulator program that you can use without a robot.
I don't know if it has the field or not, but
If it doesn't yet, it will shortly.
oh, all right.
But yeah, it is a full-fledged simulator that you
Right,
can.
I'm sure it didn't before
Right.
today.
It's a full-fledged simulator that you can write your Java code, put it into, and run your code right through there. So it's a great tool, especially for when you haven't yet built a robot. Your other option is, start building the chassis as soon as you can to get something movable. But electronics are hard to come by right now. So you're going to have some issues with building a chassis and getting something movable. But do what you can.
So do we have any more questions out there, you guys, before we shut off this live stream?
Nothing on Ring, nothing on YouTube. All right, well, it is 1:30. For those people here, feel free to stick around, mess with the field,
Play,
take
touch,
measurements,
do whatever.
move stuff around. We're going to go meet with our team and start talking about this. But yeah,
Are
we're
we
here,
off?
ask questions, have fun. For those of you on the call, thanks for joining us.
First coach's call happens 2 weeks from Thursday.
2 weeks from Thursday, the
2 weeks
first
from
coach's call.
Thursday, and you'll see stuff from me and Tina about that.